Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where the cat and mouse games between Linfield and Larne continued, with each side successfully navigating their home assignment. That's all ahead of a crucial meeting between the two at Inver Park on Saturday. Who is best poised to grasp the opportunity in what could be a key battle in the road towards Gibson Cup glory? Cliftonville continue to fight to keep their name in that window, a Joe Gormley-led Reds keeping in touch with a goal blitz at the Swifts. Elsewhere, McCartan steals a point for the Ports with a long-range goal at the final whistle, but an altercation between Paul Heatley and Lewis MacKinnon sees the discussion around retrospective bans come to the fore once again. It's never boring, is it, on this, your latest weekly edition of Kicking Match. We've got big games to cover, we've got goals to cover, we've got red cards to cover, we've got non-red cards to cover. We had big games at the bottom, at the top, and of course this ever-expanding middle in the Irish League. And we're going to talk about it all this week in the welcome company of the returning sports reporter with Belfast Live and the Daily Mirror NI. Hello, Stephen Crawford. How are you?
How are you, Peter?
I'm doing pretty swell, sniffly. I think a lot of people are at this time of year. It's usually now, and then it'll be January. And then hopefully that'll be it for ages. You've avoided it yourself?
A few weeks ago, I was down, man flu, as they call it, no sympathy for it. Just had a soldier on bravely, as they say.
Well, we did old soldier on this weekend. Interesting slate of games. Stephen, look, you have been following the league for years. You're out and about at lots of different grounds. We're slightly away from the halfway marker, but we're definitely well into this league now. What do you make of it? What's kind of the key narrative threads that you see start to emerge as we are slap bang in the middle of November?
Yeah, I think the first section of the game, everybody was consistently inconsistent. If that's a term we can coin, because nobody was really doing anything substantial where everybody was tripping over themselves. But I think it shows you where the league's at, really, and it's one of the things I think has come from full-time football. The teams maybe in the lower half of the league have benefited from players not able to go full-time, and it's strengthened them. When you look at the likes of Ballymena and Dungannon, obviously they're the two standout this year that have really kicked on and recruited well, and I think the league as a whole has strengthened, even though maybe the results haven't been overly impressive, but I think the results are spread out a lot more. But I think now in the last week or two, you can just see Cliftonville, Linfield starting to get into a wee bit of a rhythm, and I think now that they'll probably maybe push on towards Christmas, and then you have Larne coming up on the horizon as well.
Hindsight, of course, is 2020, and no one really predicted this kind of situation that we're in. But you can somewhat reverse engineer this idea that this should have been slightly on the cards. We had this established top six, and we still do until it all changes come the end of the season for years and years and years. And coming into the season, we had Coleraine, lots of changes, moved to full time. Crusaders, biggest revolution that club has seen in 20 years. Lots of key players moving on near the end of their career, loses big figure. And Baxter as manager, how's this new rookie going to come in? Glentoran, we saw at the end of last season that they were about to enter rebuild and that it wasn't going to be something quick. You add in the fact that Larne was going to play European games. Cliftonville lose their entire strike force, all bar this one club legend who has to be near the end of his days just based on mother time. And Ballymena get a whole new team, broadly. Dungannon Swifts add to a team that finished the season really, really well. And suddenly it was obvious that we were going to have the situation where the difference between third and ninth is a mere 3 points. Obvious.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I know. I don't know why I didn't pick it up back then, but no, I think it's great to see, because we always talk about the Irish League. Anytime we talk to a manager after a game, it's the same old cliche: no easy games in the Irish League. And sometimes you go, yeah, you play on lip service, but this year I think it's really, really hard to call a game before it starts. I think if you sit down and say who's going to win today, you couldn't pick even probably 50% of the winners out of a full Irish League fixture on a Saturday, So, but that, to me, for the fans, that creates that bit of mystique and interest in it. If you're going out every week and one team steamrolling over the rest of them, people get a wee bit bored. But this year it's going to be very, very hard to call who actually goes on and wins the silverware.
You see, if you're a Linfield fan, you don't think that's boring at all.
Oh,
That that that
100%.
sounds like status quo for us, if that's
Yeah.
okay. And there's an interesting dynamic that is starting to emerge over the past couple of weeks, where this cat and mouse game between Linfield and Larne, where Larne, actually, when you think about it, used to be the Friday night team who would get the win and Linfield would have to respond. And what we've seen time and time again is that, in fact, Linfield are going first on the Saturday, or maybe the Friday, not every single week. And it's Larne who have been set up in this position where they're already behind them based on points. They've got 3 games to claw back at them. And on top of that, they've got to try and pull them back point wise. And Linfield have had to go out first, not always get the result, but on the whole, they've been getting their results. And then Larne have had to try and respond, adding in the fact that they're mentally, physically tired, swapping about the team with Europe. So for Linfield, they have had a few dodgy results at home, but to get that win against Ballymena on Saturday, as much as it was expected, it helps the mental game that's currently being played.
100%. And I think Saturdays, although they probably dominated the game in terms of chances and possession, it looked like one of those games where they could easily have drawn. Ballymena dug in and put in a real good shift, and probably the introduction of Reece and obviously the sending off of Stevie O'Donnell. Those things changed the game, and Linfield will come out of that thinking that was a very big 3 points. And all they can do is keep winning games, look at the table and see Larne so far. 3 games they have in hand. Do you really take them into consideration at the minute? You still think Larne are quite a bit behind. So as you say, they're playing catch up, but Linfield just have to keep putting the points on the board and then putting the pressure over to Larne.
They've had to weather this injury storm at the back, and perhaps they aren't being given enough credit for that. It's not an area of the team that fans would have said our back line is mustard, but they've got in and they've had to rely, and it's what we've seen actually over the past few years, on Matthew Orr, young player, finding his feet, because Shields has moved back to be a regular player in this back line. And when you have that, oftentimes that's where you can see the mistakes happening, or the solidity slip ever so slightly. And I know Ballymena aren't particularly the most exhilarating team going forward, but it's still credit to them that they are hanging on and they're not getting caught out in the same way as they go to and chase games late on as they've had to over the past few weeks.
Yeah, like I think they probably started last season where they were struggling at the back when Eunice picked up that injury, and Chris Shields dropped in there as a makeshift centre back, and they've sort of had to make do and get on with it. And I think it's maybe a position that David Healy will look to address maybe in January, if they could maybe strengthen the back line somewhere, bring somebody else in, because I'm sure he misses the influence of Shields in midfield as well. So as you rightly say, they dug in there on Saturday and they kept another clean sheet. Interestingly, that David Walsh has played the last 2 games as well, so he's obviously changed things up in goals. Because Chris Johns was obviously such a fixture there for the last few years. So I think just getting the points now, you get to Christmas and see where they are in the new year is probably David Healy's mind. He'll not be worried too much about performance levels.
That's something that I haven't touched on right here in the podcast. That is a big call. It was a big call originally. You can change it up for a game or two, but to stick with them, and if he does stick with them moving forward, that's huge, because if there is to be a result that doesn't go Linfield's way, it's harder to usurp a long time number one, as Johns was and still is maybe, than a sub keeper. He's there trying to earn his stripes week after week. I'm sure managers would say it's always week to week with a position like that, but we know how it works. It's a position that you almost feel superstitious about. You stick with who you got and you don't want to even question it. He's twisted in a situation where most would stick, and so far so good. I mean, he's been very patient. He stuck around Linfield for a long time. Commonly, you would see a goalkeeper be at a big club in this country for maybe 2 seasons, maybe three, and decide we've got to move on. He's been patient, and you can't suggest any otherwise. He's been given his chance.
David obviously has faith in him that he's able to throw him in, and it's hard for a goalkeeper because you generally, if you're number two, you don't play unless it's maybe a cup game or if somebody's suspended or injured. It's not like an outfield player where you could maybe get in a few minutes here and there. So you have to be ready at Linfield whenever the chance comes, and David's obviously been ready, and Healy's bagged him, which is like, I'll give him a lot of confidence.
Ballymena, turning to them, it's a four-loss stretch. They know what that feels like. It happened at the start of the season. They were resolute for long periods of time, and then finally, with 12 minutes to go, they concede that goal. Reece Annette coming on for Linfield. This is kind of the period of time last year where he found himself in the team and got a decent run of goals. They go down to 10 men on the 60th minute mark. It's kind of silly from O'Donnell, but their feet were definitely put to the fire for extensive periods of that time, and when you're feeling the screw being tightened, things like that happened.
Jim's comments afterwards, he felt there was probably a foul against Stevie O'Donnell before he fell and handled the ball. Again, it's one of those ones. It's if it goes against you, you're angry. If it goes for you, you're pleased. But it was such a big turning point in the game because they had dug in and worked so hard, and then they lose a key figure out their back line. Such an experienced figure that that they suddenly have to change shape, and he wondered did that contribute to the opening goal come along. But when you're at Windsor and you see the score at 0-0 and you just feel that the goal's coming, it was a bit like a Carrick last week. We could just sense that the pressure was ramping up, and then eventually Linfield scored.
It's been a bit. I've been a bit yin and yang about Ballymena. 8 wins, 8 losses, 20 goals scored, 20 goals conceded. It's hard to figure out where they are set up going forward in the league. I think they've shown that they can give a lot of people a good going and can get big results. In turn, they also show that they're not realistically a side that are built to solidify themselves in the top 6 and not sweat about falling out. I thought a number of weeks ago that they were really looking good. If they just kept some sort of stability and points came here or there, they could stick around there quite easily, just how significant the bedrock of those points were. But to pick up 0 out of 12, struggling to score goals, I appreciate at the start of the season it was just don't get in the relegation zone. But for Ballymena, the fans will think, look, we're happy with where we are. We are still 4th. But there's like a hope that maybe they can get back to maybe vying for top 6. Do you think they've got it in them to do it? There's a lot of football still to be played.
It's been a really roller coaster of a season. Four defeats at once, and then or 4 defeats. I'm sure at times you don't know where they're coming or going. And to be fair to them, they do put in a real shift for their manager. I think there's very few games this year where Jim's probably been disappointed with the efforts of his team. It's just that cutting edge, and I think Ben Kennedy is obviously a massive player, but the problem is if Ben maybe doesn't find the goals, you're asking who else is going to find the goals. And I think that's maybe something that Jim realizes, and he's probably maybe looking for a wee bit more out of his other strikers to start contributing a bit, because he can't just put it all in one man. But I think they'll have enough about them that I don't see many issues at the bottom of the table this year. But as you say, they would probably love to be pushing over top 6 spot after that terrific mid-section of the season.
Linfield win, moving to Sunday. That then put the ball in Larne's court. Without Andy Ryan, they go up against Coleraine, who had been on a 2-game winning streak. And it's the men who haven't been at the fore a lot this season, McKendry and Paul O'Neill, who got the goals. I think that's going to be an important victory come the end of the season.
100%. And, going into the game, that Larne hadn't actually won a game after a European match this season, which was quite remarkable. And it shows you probably the efforts it's taken to play in Europe, in terms of traveling and obviously what it's taken out of them. So they come away with 3 points. And I don't think they were at their best by any means. I think they scored at crucial times, but I think Coleraine probably maybe a wee bit disappointed that they maybe didn't come out with a point in the end of the big chance at the end. But I think for Larne, getting that first one after a European game and keeping in touching distance, matching Linfield's result is all that they wanted to do.
Paul O'Neill has been somewhat the forgotten man for Larne over the past 2 seasons. He was usurped by Andy Ryan, and that league bonus connection didn't have on pure goals a standout end to last season. He's had to be used as a part of this squad, and there was lots of talk of Larne looking for a new striker to add on top of Benji McGee. Was it going to be David Fisher? I think you forget that if Paul O'Neill was playing the way he has been playing when he's got his chance with Larne at a Glenavon or a Glentoran even, or whoever, Larne would probably go, has the stature, has a bit of that Irish League experience, and nice. That's probably the type of player we need. He's been taken for granted on that subs bench at Inver Park.
Yeah, I think he's been very unlucky that he found himself behind such a great partnership in Bonus and Ryan. I think any player would struggle to break into it. But I think the one thing you say about Paul O'Neill is he's never let Larne down. Any time he's played, he's ran his socks off, done his shift. And I think yesterday's was his seventh goal of the season already, which isn't a bad return for a guy that doesn't start every game. But I think you're right. There's if he was playing at other Irish League clubs, he would be probably a main striker. And I think it'll be interesting to see if any other clubs would test Larne's resolve in January, because I'm sure he's frustrated at times that he doesn't get more of a regular game, and he's at an age now where he probably feels that he should be playing more regularly.
And he doesn't scream impact player to me either. He's a man that can, obviously he can do bits from the bench, but he is someone that can embed himself in the match, try and build on momentum, link things up. Sometimes trying to do that in a frenetic last 70 minutes, or let's say a game that's already been won and you're just trying to settle things and give one of the strikers a break. It doesn't always set you up on a platform to succeed, but he grabbed his goal well on Sunday, and a man who swapped sides in the summer, bringing Conor McKendry into Larne. He was a player that I didn't know where he would fit into this team, and perhaps there isn't a nailed on role for him. But Conor McKendry, weapon of a left foot, we know he's got it, and it was another one for the collection on Sunday.
Yeah, well, it was once described to me as mercurial, and I think that's perfect for Conor McKendry, because he produces moments of sublime magic, and then maybe other moments where managers were pulling their hair out, going, why did he do that?" But on Sunday, he was very unfortunate. He hit the post with the shot just before that, and then his goal for the Larne second was a fantastic strike. I think probably Max Little, looking back, might be a bit disappointed that he didn't deal with it better, but such as the power Connor gets in that left foot, it's hard to judge at times how much movement there was in the ball as well. But yeah, he's probably a wee bit frustrated that he's not playing more regularly. But I think he obviously wanted to go back to Larne, he wanted to be involved in what's happening down there. So he will get his opportunities during the season, and he proved on Sunday that he could be a match winner again.
Higgledy-piggledy Larne side looking there. Any Larne side without Ryan in it at all looks slightly odd. There's still a few names that most Irish League fans are trying to get their head round in Siri and Todd. Logan Wallace is a young player who I've talked about in this programme, and big moment late on in that game. That is a great slide to get a little nick on that ball. Was it an injury time just to get it out of the path, because it was just gliding towards the feet of Matthew Shevlin, and you give him the ball in that position in the box, there's only one place it is going, and that's in the back of the net. But he didn't get the chance to do it. Big moment at the end of that game.
Huge, and from the original camera angle, you looked at it and thought, how did Shevlin miss that? Because he just thought he's coming on this is it, see, so you guys are. But when you saw the reverse angle and you saw the wee nick from Logan just to get in front of Shevlin there, and I think you can give him a lot of credit, because a lot of players might have switched off there and not have seen the player coming over their shoulder, but he was switched on in injury time, did enough to earn his side to 3 points, because Thorne's Matthew Shevlin's and he's probably his eyes lit up whenever he was moving towards that ball, thinking this is going to be another goal for the collection.
He's been on fire for Coleraine. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do the bits to get Coleraine any kind of result at Inver Park. It's the back line that seems to be the weakness in Coleraine. I didn't think they showed themselves up in any way on Sunday, but they're not as resolute as you probably need to be sitting up near the top with the Linfields and even the Cliftonvilles. They are topsy turvy. You talked about Mercurial. They have that Campbell, Murray, Glacken. Glacken got his goal. Great run from Lyndon Kane. Powerful, pulsating run from deep. It almost looked like something you would see from Levi Ives or a Tomas Cosgrove at that ground, but he was the man that set up on the plate for Glacken. They have this brilliant attacking threat, but it always feels as though they're having to chase games.
Yeah, I think Dean, he probably would be frustrated at the manner of some of the goals that they've conceded this season. But I think when you look at the injuries they've had, it's been key injuries to defensive players. Lyndon Kane was out for 9 games there. Dean Jarvis has missed a few games. Graham Kelly hasn't played much this season. And those are three sort of experienced Irish League players that you're taking out of what is relatively a new backline. Like Cameron Stewart and Kyle McLeod are young players that have come in this season and they've done well at times. But I think that having that experienced trio of those guys alongside them would have helped them out an awful lot. And I look at Corey and I think they do need those experienced heads, maybe even an already experienced head in midfield as well, because they can be maybe a touch naive in Irish League terms at times. I mean, they just want to go forward, they want to bomb, but having someone like that experienced head in alongside them, maybe Dean will look to do that in January just to strengthen that panel a wee bit. And if they can cut out the silly goals or conceding, they can, as you say, they can hurt teams going forward.
Great weekend for Cliftonville. This has been an excellent run of form, 4 wins on the bounce. They go to Stagmore Park, which has been a very difficult, a literal difficult place to go for people this season. And it's that old familiar name, Joe Gormley, who is completely doing almost everything. He looks sharp, he looks energetic, he looks lethal. He's terrifying defenders. They just stop and freeze at times with him. He has this new lease on life as the main man with the Reds again, and he seems to be enjoying it. Another hat trick. We've seen that before.
I know you sort of run out of superlatives to describe. It doesn't matter how he gets another year older, but he never loses that ability in front of goal. And you looked at Cliftonville in the summer, losing the likes of Wilson, Hale, Ashford. That was a lot of goals to lose from any team. And I think it took them a wee while to adjust, get into that way of playing again. And Jim's maybe tweaked a few things. But when you have someone like Joe Gormley who's scored countless goals in his 500 odd appearances for Cliftonville, you just can't rule them out. And he's such a lethal marksman. And he's another guy that just loves scoring goals. Every time he scores goals, it's like as if it's the first one he's ever scored. And I think that just fires his belly that he just can't wait for the next one to come along.
That's something about it as well. He still looks as though he's in his first 20 goal a season pump. He loves it. He just has this fire. You said fire. I think fire is the right way to do it. And, the Reds and Jim Magilton need someone like him, need that experience to come to the fore and draw actually other players away. And there's no doubt that actually he has been helped by the reintroduction of Rory Hale. Yes, he's been in the team for weeks and weeks and weeks, but he took a while to get up to his best, and you could see at times in that game against Dungannon, the ability to drive from midfield just opens up so many more avenues. He has a weapon of a right foot when he wants to unleash it, but he is another player that teams know that they have to concentrate on, and you can only spend so much of your energy and your concentration on so many players, and that's always been a strength for Cliftonville, that if they go and try and hurt you one way, you try and block that off, there's another avenue. And it's been a great turnaround, and they're sitting really well. I thought a couple of weeks ago that they could be in the mix if they keep up the consistency. That fell off a cliff, but they've clawed their way back up, and a swap of results over the next week, and they could be 2 points away from top. 15 games played, they're on 27 points, 5 off Linfield. It shows you how important that result was over at Windsor Park. They're on a roll, they're on fire, and Jim Magilton will be saying, same again, lads.
100%. And you look at the last four games that they've won in the league, and there's some big results along the way. And I think Saturday's result at Dungannon, as you say, it's not been an easy place for anybody to go this season, and to go there and won 4-1. And I think it was was probably a convincing one. But as you're right to say, Rory Hale is such a key factor for them. He's such a driving force, and to me, he's up there with the very best in the league. And when he's on his game, Cliftonville are hard to stop, and they just seem to have found a rhythm at minute. And I think they'll push Linfield again this season along with Larne, so they will.
Swifts are another side similar to Ballymena, are somewhat returning to the mean. Similar evenness to it all. 7 losses, 7 wins, 2 draws, 21 scored, 21 conceded. It's hard to figure out what we will see next from the Swifts, especially because you would have said, well, look, they'll get the odd result away from home. They'll be interesting going forward. Yes, they might be leaky at the back, but they can attack teams that are really stout at home. That's 2 losses in a row. 1 the lock all, which can be a bump in the road for anybody. Cliftonville, Cliftonville eventually run away with it after Dungannon strike first. Again, hard to tell if they're going to be able to stick around. If they are, they'll have to bounce back. That's 4 losses out of the recent 5 games they've played in the league. There's talent, and they'll have their good days and their bad days. We just wonder what side of the scale will that end up being.
Yeah, I think the big thing for them is the amount of goals they've been conceding of late. Like I think that's 11 goals in the last three league games that they've shipped, which is not pretty reading. Whereas earlier in the season they weren't doing that. They're a very very hard team to beat and score against. So I think probably Rod will be impressing on them, like, get back to being hard to beat again, and stop conceding silly goals. But again, they've shown throughout the early parts of the season that they are capable of going and getting results. So it's just about keeping that confidence up. They don't want to go on a spiral now where they start to lose 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games and head the wrong direction.
It's just kind of what they are on, that's 3 in a row. And similar to Ballymena, you add in an extra win or 4 points across some of those games. They're kind of creeping up in a better spot, and you wonder where they'll sit in, because they were in such a good position to maybe sneak top 6, and they're still in it, both Ballymena and Dungannon. But again, these are teams that we all thought were probably going to be sniffing around near the bottom, so it'd even be where they are. It shouldn't be forgotten. It's like the same thing with Ballymena earlier on in the season. 4 losses, the 8 wins coming at the end of it, of that 12-game run. The momentum was there, so it can all change very, very quickly. Let's go to 2 quite significant games news-wise in Mid-Ulster on Saturday. Let's start with the game at Shamrock Park. I was at this, Portadown against Carrick Rangers. Interesting result based on what happened on the pitch player-wise, but let's go to the main news story coming from that. It was a altercation between Paul Heatley of Carrick Rangers and Lewis MacKinnon of Portadown. I mean, maybe a minute or 2 before the end of the half, where Paul Heatley's chasing after a ball, McKinnon's in front of him. MacKinnon goes down trying to protect the ball or trying to keep Heatley away from it, and a lot of fans believe that they saw this happen live. The referee didn't see it or didn't give it, neither did the person on the line. And what they believe they saw, and reviewing the video, you can see that Paul Heatley, he did connect with Lewis MacKinnon with his right boot going forward, and then as he jumped over MacKinnon, the flat of his studs connects with Lewis MacKinnon's back. Football fans would say that's a stamp, as we would call it. I'm sure it's got an official name in the referee's handbook, and that should be a red card. Didn't come, and the reason why that's more interesting in the league season 24-25, because the precedent that has been established by the Irish League is that, well, mainly the IFA, is that retroactive bans are now a thing. So lots of fans over the weekend post this footage and go, should Paul Heatley now be suspended for that?
Yeah.
Before we get into that, do you believe that would be a red card if the referee saw it in plain sight?
Yeah, when you look back, it's probably not doesn't make pretty viewing that there's a couple of kicks and maybe that the steps on MacKinnon. Only Heats knows if that was deliberate or not. Like, it's hard to judge. Did he mean to stand the player, or was it is momentum taking him forward? But it's going to be up now to the officials to decide that off the back of that. was that a deliberate action, or what happened? It's a big call, as you rightly said. Like, obviously Josh Carson was photographic or evidence done him earlier in the season, and that row's still rumbling on in terms of will this ban take place or not. But um, I just think, are we going to get a trial by television? Every time now that something happens, it's just a shame it wasn't dealt with on the day. And I don't blame the referee. Sometimes the referee can't see everything, can't make the judgment calls. It's up to the rest of his officiating team to help him out with that. But mistakes happen at times, and I think managers understand that it's very hard. You can't see everything on the pitch, but it can have a big bearing on the result. And obviously, Paul Heatley's such a big player for Carrick. If they were to lose him now for a number of games, it could have a major impact on them.
It's just interesting that's where we are. A lot of people, when we discuss this on this podcast, and obviously other people talking about it, this is the kind of scenario which they felt as though it could come up almost on a weekly basis. We'll see what decisions are being made there. Again, it's I think regardless of an intent, probably people would suggest the connection alone might lead to a red card. What impact that would have on the game at that time, you can't tell. Portadown would have to have played 45 minutes against Carrick, trying to break them down. I don't know. Carrick had a very similar situation 2 weeks beforehand against Glenavon and stood firm, and I thought Carrick was so well organised and stout in defence that I don't know if that would have helped Portadown in that situation, but a crushing end of the game if you're a Carrick Rangers fan, because they hold on, they get the early goal, a messy goal, that comes from Luke McCullough firing in, bounced off Shay McCartan. It's one of those weird goals where everybody's kind of looking around going, did that count? Did something happen? It just felt very, very odd in the ground. And from there, Carrick were far better in the first half. Portadown pushed forward, left the back door open, as I said, and Michaelitis and Heatley thundered forward, and Aaron McCarry is the hero for Portadown on numerous occasions. And the other hero for Portadown in recent weeks has been Shay McCartan. To look up, see it, go, screw it, fire his right boot round it and ping it in. From my angle, it didn't seem to take a deflection, so it looked even better. The deflection comes off the Carrick player, and that takes it away from Glendinning in the goal. But crushing, but once again for Portadown, another late goal. There's been later goals for them, but that was literally the last kick of the game. It went in, and I think as Portadown players were celebrating, the Lions person started walking past them and like, it's all over.
I know, it's remarkable, and I think that says a lot for the team and the team spirit that they just keep going. There's still minutes to be played. They're keeping going and keeping pushing, and like whenever Shay McCartan was unavailable, I think probably Ned Curry was hoping that we would pop up with big moments like that, and he's certainly done it recently with his goal against Larne in there on Saturday. And Portadown, I think, deserve a lot of credit for the way they've gone about their football this year. They're undaunted. They'll go and have a go at teams, and they're getting the points on the board. And we talk about Ballymena and Dungannon having good seasons. I think Portadown have sort of gone under the radar a wee bit in terms of what they have done already this season. And I think if they can get to January still in a good position, they'll be sitting going, we can kick on here for 7th, 8th, we can push up maybe even a top 6, and I'm sure they'll look to strengthen again in January.
It's been a good start for Stephen Baxter and Carrick. It's a squad which he inherited, but from what I've seen from them, they are so defiant and hard to break down at the back. Linfield found that. Glenavon struggled to take down 10 men. Portadown, like the second half of that game, it was all Portadown, but Carrick were very happy just to let them try and find a way through them. They couldn't. I think as much as Portadown had all the ball, it's not like there was a whole lot of chances that I could count and talk about, and it's another situation where Portadown probably get out of jail, but that's what good players give you. In Shay McCartan, he looks to add more to that team being deeper. He's finding the ball almost like late stage Wayne Rooney. It's that kind of player who finds it deep, picks it up and can find a pass or can happily dribble round them. And you're probably a stat which I found in lead up to that game, that if Portadown had won that game, they would have surpassed their points total from the last time they were in the top flight already. So, I mean, they had 23 points that year. They're on 22 now. So a win would have took them over there. So that just shows how massively different this league has been for them. And if they were somehow able to sneak a win, they could have been sitting in third outright. So it's a team that's looking back over the past few weeks, thinking great results, some poor ones along the way, and a team who probably had a keen eye on that game was Glenavon, because Portadown our side, they'll want to drag down towards their end of the table. They also didn't want to see Carrick move up. So a draw maybe helps them, but it doesn't help them too much when they're losing at home, and they're losing in the way they did. That was a fairly assured victory for Glentoran, and they seemed to take control of the game and never really let go of it. 3-0 in the end.
Yeah, that was an interesting game because Glenavon probably started the brighter, with the two sides, and then Glentoran, their air sortie forward, scored a fantastic goal. Danny Amos, magnificently afoot, and it was a cracking goal. But even after that, Glenavon kept plugging away, and they maybe should have had a penalty. Aaron Whiteman had a bit of a barge on Chris Everton in the box, but they got away with it. But the second goal, just straight after half time, killed the game, and the Glens kicked on after that, and Glenavon just didn't respond at all. And what's that now? 5 games without a win, and I think it'd be quite worrying for Steve McDonald that they're in this bit of a rut. Obviously, getting beaten in the Bet McLean Cup as well, and how do you get the results? And you've got the two teams below you sort of now breathing down your necks as well.
What was your sense from the Glenavon fans on that game? They didn't start the season particularly well. They have this nice little jump up with a couple of results, mainly two of them against their rivals, Portadown, and since then it's been losses and difficult draws, and they've still got that fairly stout back line, but it's starting to creak ever so slightly, and the goals just have not been their thing this year at all. 11 all year in the league.
I think that's going to be the killer for them. They're just not scoring enough, and even on Saturday they had the better of the ball in the first half, but they just didn't really threaten a big amount, what I mean? And it's getting that killer instinct. Whereas you look at Carrick sitting below them, they have so much attacking talent, and you think that Carrick are always going to score more than what Glenavon probably will. So that would be a bit of a worry for them. And then when you're starting to concede a few at the other end, it's not a good recipe, and you just need to start getting points on the board. These that bit of a worry from the teams below them.
You can see online there's a lot of discourse from Glenavon fans that they're starting to be concerned now that bright few couple of weeks have begun to fade away. There's still 6 weeks till January where they can maybe try and fix this, and even do they have the budget to fix it? Is even changing the manager the appropriate course of action here? It's he now probably is as much under pressure going into a difficult couple of weeks of fixtures than he probably ever has been in the hot seat at Mourneview Park.
Yeah, I don't think the pressure's ramping up straight away. I think the next few weeks, as you rightly say, he's got some big games coming up, and I think when time we get to Christmas, it'll be telling. I think he knows himself that they need to start picking up results, and it's not for the want of trying. I know that they're working hard and they're doing all they can at the minute. It's just not falling for them. They're just not getting the rub of the green. And on Saturday, it could have been a very different game if they got the first goal. But we know what football clubs are like. They start getting jitters around Christmas, and if a team's sitting nervously at one end of the table, do they take the decision? But I think it might be a wee bit harsh on them. They pull the plug then because they maybe just are a club that needs a couple of results to build the confidence up again. But I think the fact that Loughgall and Carrick have got results in recent weeks, that just ramps it up a wee bit more for them.
Yeah, the Loughgall result is one that probably comes to mind as one they could have done without going forward. And above them, they're on 15 points. Coleraine and Portadown, if you forget about Larne in 9th, have 22. So that's a big difference. They don't want that to extend any further. Look, they're still in a good position in 10th. That still keeps you in the league without any drama. But I think they feel Carrick coming towards them. Loughgall still in the mix. They could have been a bit farther behind, and they can probably feel the if they're looking at Portdown and Coleraine believing they can claw them back with 7 points. Loughgall will think exactly the same when there's only 4 points between them. Word on Glentoran, they're hot, they're cold, they're in, they're out. If you're a fan of these Belfast men, you'll think glad to get a win, and it's probably one of the better Dylan Connolly performances. He's been a highlight for them numerous times when people see him. He's probably just lacked goal contributions, and he delivered some of them on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's probably maybe a fair comment in terms of what his output's been. Like he's been an exciting player. Boys that'll do a shift for you as well. But on Saturday, obviously, assisted, and he popped up with a third goal as well. And um, he can be a real match winner for the Glens if he can just get that out of him on a weekly basis. They had suffered. I spoke to Decky in the build up to the game, and they didn't kill teams off. They got in good positions in games, and never took their chances. On Saturday, they took their chances when they come along, but it's going to be, I think, maybe a wee bit start for the Glens this season. Do they find that probably best 11, and again up front, they're probably nobody's scoring really regularly. They're working hard, but there's not getting that 15, 20 goal a season, man. If they can get Jay Donnelly and David Fisher firing, they will be a threat. But I think they were relieved to get back to winning ways on Saturday.
Did anybody particularly impress you? Seeing James Douglas is in the side again after spending a bit of time on the bench. I think that's a big goal for Finlay Thorndike after missing the penalty. And Danny Amos has been, for a lot of people, hyped up a lot. GLI in goals, the player of the month, rightfully so. So it's been a team where you hear about these players going on a good run of games and then they somewhat fade away. And any key men that maybe stood out to you on Saturday?
I think a special word for young Aaron Whiteman, because that was actually his first start under Diggin Devine, remarkably. Even though Devine came in, he picked up a bad injury in March and they've been battling back, and they come in on Saturday up against young Atherton, who's, a bit about him, and they give Whiteman a good test, but Aaron stood up to it and helped create the second goal, and they put a big shift in, and I know that he's very keen. He's probably right back's not where he would really want to be playing, but he's keen to do a shift for the team, and he certainly didn't let them down on Saturday. And I think when you've guys like that are willing to go out and through all causes, and there's Marcus Kane, the big warrior at the back, and I think when he plays at the back, they look a more solid outfit, and they'll be looking to try and keep Marcus fit for the rest of the season.
Crews Loughgall, finally Crews put to an end a 2-game winning run for Loughgall, and Crusaders have been this funny side, ticking over week by week. They've played only 14 games, so they're like a game or two behind other people, but they're in 5th. They've got 23 points. They look particularly good at home. A lot of these players are finding their feet properly. Another good goal for Franklin, and Jimmy Gallagher actually had a great block reviewing the highlights. It can be a tight pitch up there at Seaview, but it's home for them, and home comforts have often been exactly what they want.
I saw the Crews a couple of times recently, and I think they're delighted to have Philly Lowry back in the starting lineup. It's 3 goals in a week now, and it's just what he gives you from midfield. Like, it's obviously that experience that you can't buy, and but his goal threat. He's always in the penalty area. He's always sniffing out, and that was a crucial goal to get them up and running on Saturday. And they had the game won by 60 minutes, which was quite surprising, because I thought Loughgall could maybe push the Crews on Saturday, but the Crews were in a good run, and I think Cadell's doing, he's going about his business quietly. He's not shouting too much. As you say, Harry Flinton's made an impression, and I've been very impressed with Kieran Offord and what he's done of late. Like, he's a good target man, and I think the Crews, if they could get another couple of results, they could be pushing for top 4.
I think this is actually low key a significant season for Crusaders, because you look at the side and the way that they've invested and brought players in. They haven't went big on taking players from other teams around them. And looking at the squad, if you maybe put a different coloured shirt on them, they might not seem like they are 1 to 11 this title chasing team, but because it's Crusaders, we're so used to them doing the business, we're so used to them winning and being there, we see them as this great team. And maybe if, and look, Europe didn't go well for them last year, there's no doubt about that, but this season there might be a bit more on the line than we think, because I've seen the size of Crusaders. If they don't keep consistently going in Europe, if they don't produce a player who maybe moves on that they can reinvest, they could easily slip down and be a part of a tier just below their fellow other Belfast clubs. I'm not saying it's been there yet, but every player they bring in and they develop, there's risk involved there, and if they don't get the gamble right, they don't have the kind of pocketbook to be able to just rectify that very easily.
Yeah, and it's obviously gone through a lot of transition in the summertime with Stephen Baxter leaving, and there's probably Diggy's put his own stamp on the team in the last few months in terms of how he wants to play. So it's been big changes, but I think Diggy is someone who's obviously worked at the academy. He knows there's a lot of young players coming through there, a lot of young talented players, but getting their key experienced players like Gallagher coming back there is he's a big bonus at the back. George Stewart's found his footing since moving to Seaview, and he can be a match winner in his day. But they're sitting now in the semi-finals of the County Antrim Shield this week. They're into the last 8 of the Bet McLean Cup, and like you can't really ask for much more in what is going to be a season of transition. And I think it'll be all about building. What was it David Davies used to say? Baby steps and incremental strides. I think that's probably what they'll look for, is that this season is just to try and kick on and do what they can, and then build on again next season.
I don't know if you saw a huge amount of Lockall live this season. There's been moments of hope emerge. They'll not be too knocked off their mission losing away in Belfast. I think they know that they're going to be in a fight that's going to be rough and tumble till the end of the season. But when there's people discussing the idea that this is a very poor Irish league, which I disagree with, I think they're one of the best bottom sides this league has seen in years, probably.
No, I agree with you. And I actually watched them against Larne, a few weeks ago, and they were looking at night. They put in a fantastic shift, and again, they're a side that know their manager, respect their manager, know their jobs, and they probably obviously Benji McGee's a massive miss out of that side, and they haven't really gone out to replace him directly. But I think now if you offer Dean Smith probably 11th place, he would bite your hand off it to get that chance of a playoff, But the worry is they don't want to be cut adrift. They don't want to be too far away that they have no chance in the second half of the season to even go for 11th place. So, but they've shown in the last few weeks that they are capable of going and getting results. Saturday was probably a bit of a sore one for them, but they'll go again. They're a very honest bunch of players down there, and I think, as I said there, they'll go and give everything for their manager. It just might come down to the wee bit of quality that they're just lacking in certain areas, but it certainly won't be for the one to try and so.
We'll briefly touch on some of the League Cup action. We were just discussing there about Coleraine and Crews. Slightly disappointing if you are of the Coleraine persuasion. Take the lead. Excellent goal from Shevlin, I thought there. He's seen as a poacher, as a fox the box type player, but I mean, there was something, the ability to move his body, to have the strength to hold off that defender and still knock it in, I thought just showed a bit of nous and quality that few players in this league have. And unfortunately it was all for nothing because the Crews come back and score a late goal, and Laurie's the man behind it there. I thought McGonigal had some big chances. One early in the first half, he won the ball, free of a man, and he doesn't hit the target. That's a player that Coleraine need to get his confidence back up.
Yeah, Coleraine probably it was a really open game, and both sides had chances in the first half. And Corian probably had maybe the better of the chances. You say McConaughey, two big chances before Chevy scored, um, and maybe if Jamie has a bit more confidence about him, he goes on and scores one of those. But it's just where the Bandsiders are at the minute. They're just lacking and just taking their chances, particularly in the road. At home, they've been quite well and they've got a lot of good results. But away from home, they've maybe struggled slightly. But to be fair, the Crews come back well. And the second half, it looked like as if we were heading to extra time, and then up pops Mr. Lowry with a super finish. But again, it's a goal probably Corian are disappointed with. He's not a man you want to leave free in the penalty area, and he punished them rightly. And probably the Crews deserved to go through in the end up, because they were maybe the more dominant team in the second half.
We didn't get a full slate of games in that round midweek last week, but just one of the games that added to the slight discontent amongst those who support the Lurgan Blues. Armagh City, probably the shock of the round, winning out on penalties. That's a team that they weren't able to knock off with the goals. Elsewhere, nice result for the Anna, taking care of Queens. Dungannon through after beating Dollingstown, who are going well in PIL. Cliftonville take care of Bangor. Probably a good test for Bangor, who are flying high in the championship. And that leaves us with an interesting draw now for early December. It's Crew Swifts. This is the quarterfinals here. Crew Swifts, Armagh City against Cliftonville. Cliftonville will think that's a great opportunity there. Anna United against Institute or Larne. That'll be played eventually, that game. And then the final one there is Ballymena against either Linfield or Glentoran. Ballymena getting past Ards. Lots of games to be played. The reason why some of those games didn't get played is the likes of some cup fixtures. Larne, I think, give a good account themselves against St. Gallen at Windsor Park. They take an early lead, good, confidence, all that, but St. Gallen come back and it's a great little breakaway counter-attack near the end of the game that seals it for St. Gallen getting that second goal. Better, but still shows you that this is a cruel game, and Larne are still slightly off the pace to be controlling these games and be truly competitive one-on-one.
Yeah, it was a great occasion. I think the travelling fans certainly made it an occasion and a spectacle. I think they sang for the whole maybe 2.5 hours they were actually on the ground. It was good to see. But obviously Larne went in front, and you thought, right, let's see. You could see how much it spurred them on, but they conceded a fantastic strike from St. Gallen. But it looked as if they were heading to a point. I wasn't overly impressed with the Swiss side. I thought you could see.
No, I agree.
You could see they were a side that hadn't won in 8 games. They didn't have a lot of confidence. I thought going forward, they didn't look as if they were really going to harm Larne. But just saw one moment of quality, and they get in behind them and scored the winner. It was probably a really sore one for the boys to take. I know, talking to a few Larne players afterwards, that they were really disappointed that they couldn't hold on for the point because they put so much into the game. But that's the fine margins at that level. Is those teams will punish you if you give them an opportunity. But halfway through the campaign, I think the Shamrock Rovers one is obviously the one that stings the most, because that's the game they probably targeted to get something out of. But they've learning from it. They've got their merit, so that's how they kick on from this experience.
Yeah, St. Gallen weren't up to the same standards as Shamrock Rovers. They've struggled themselves in the Conference League, but again, baby steps. They were better, but Larne just didn't have the fitness, didn't have the strength to continue on. And look, it's still all positive for them. I guess it's interesting that we're in a situation that we're even being disappointed that maybe Larne couldn't hold on, but these are probably vital lessons that they'll continue to have. But look, that's great when it comes to the results there going on, but of course the league is still there for the taking, and Larne will have plenty more games like that to look forward to in the league this weekend. A nice big thick juicy slate on the Saturday, and look, it's one of the biggest games of the season. It's Larne Linfield part 2 in the league. It's the 5:30 kickoff, there to be streamed. Linfield have got a big week. It starts on Saturday night, ends on Friday evening when they go to Glentoran. So revenge will be on the menu for them. That'll be vital. How do you see this shaping up? What are the keys to victory? Because Larne, they've got this week to set themselves in. They still are a team that look higgledy-piggledy. And Linfield, without a full-strength team, still look that more solid beast. They will have been warned off by that game that they played at Windsor Park. It's just how much will Linfield come at Larne and how much will Larne sit back. I'm struggling to figure out who this game is a bigger match for. Because Linfield could probably take the draw, but in turn, if they win out, it gets Larne back for the last time, and it's a great mental victory for them.
100%. Like, and do you remember this stage last year? I think Linfield and Larne met at Windsor, and if Linfield won, I think they would have won 11 points clear of Larne at that stage. And we were all putting this down as all just going to be a decisive moment in the title race, and Larne come away with a 2-1 win. I think that will probably be in David Haley's mind. Sorry, that we can't afford to do that this year, because that really kicked Larne on again after what was a probably slow start to their season. As you rightly say, they maybe would take a point. They probably wouldn't admit that publicly, but I think that if they come out that with a point, that Larne haven't gained anything on them, and for Larne, it's a game that they probably would love to come and put a marker down and show the people that look, we're in this title race and we're here to defend our title, So I'll come down to goals. I think rest a few players in terms of the weekend, but it's a game that we're really looking forward to, because it's the first, obviously, big meeting between the two sides, and at Windsor Park, and we'll see who's going to come out the right side of it.
They lose that game against Linfield in their backyard. That expands that points total to 14 points. 35. Now they've got 3 on them to claw back. That's huge. 15 points. And they've only got Linfield twice later on in the season. That's playing 4 times gives you opportunities, but they also dwindle away. We just have not seen Linfield step up to the plate, and it's difficult away from home, take control of games. And in fact, maybe conceding early might be the best thing that can happen to Linfield, where they come out of their shell and they take it to them. Now, do they have the players, not just from 1 to 11, but 1 to 14, 15, however many you get on? That bench looks on the thin side. So maybe actually what would really suit Linfield better is a sneaky wee goal from Fitzpatrick on 18 minutes and shut her down, boys. And they say come at them. But you got to say there's definitely a goal in Larne somewhere. Be it a penalty or a corner with Bulger on the top of it, with or without Ryan. I think there's a goal in there somewhere. So I think Linfield will need 2 goals. But can they get it, and will they push themselves far out enough that they can give themselves enough opportunity to convert 2 chances?
Yeah, and I think when you look at Linfield's record at Inver Park in recent years, it's not been impressive. Like they've struggled to get victories there on a regular basis, and I just think this is going to be a real battle. 2 big teams going at it. I think it's different this year because Larne are playing catch up, so they maybe be more attack minded. But I think it could be a real tactical, battle between the 2 sides, and it's obviously still only November, so you just look at it and think, it's not going to define, say, that the title race is over, but it could have a big psychological bearing if one side gets the points over the other.
If either side was to win this game, who would you say after it? If I was to tell you who the player of the game was for either side, who would it need to be for them to feel like they've got the victory? I think for Linfield, it's all about Joel Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
It's always all about Joel Cooper, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like they don't scream like a team, and they don't usually have that in their DNA as a one-man team. But this season, he seems to be the ignition strip.
100%. I agree with you totally. Like, if Joel Cooper plays well, Linfield play well, and they usually win the game, and he is the match winner. He's just got that quality, and as you say, you don't say they're a one man team, but he is the guy that can go and win you games.
And in reverse, I think I would say actually it's probably a defender for Larne if they can stay resolute at the back and they don't get caught out, where they have this back line of who's fit, the youth of Wallace. I would say if there's a defender of some ilk who is player of the game for them, they get it. Right, money where your mouth is. How do you see this game going?
Well, after all that big talk, I would not be surprised if it finishes in a boring 0-0 draw because
1-1 for me, absolutely.
You know how these games play out. We talk about them, we say it's going to be fantastic, and then the managers get involved and it just ruins everything, doesn't it? So, no, I think it will be a bit cagey on it, and I think probably maybe a wee bit more from Linfield's side. They're going away from home thinking, we get a point here, it's a good point. But for me, I think Larne, I wouldn't say they probably need to win, but a win for them would do a lot for their season in terms of league champion.
It's funny little like moments of Orr for Linfield, Wallace for Larne, two young defenders who's probably playing the biggest games of each of their respective careers so far. You have that experience of Shields on one side, the experience of Mark Randall or Joe Thompson on the other side, and it's probably the likes of how much of a role will Annette play, because in the last game it was Lusty who had that big goal, and him or McGee could play a significant role in this game, especially if there's no Ryan. But for Linfield, Annette or Fitzpatrick, who will do the goods? Yes, 1-1 for me, biggest game of the weekend by far. But there's interesting other fixtures across the weekend. On Saturday, I think Glens Portadown could be a tight wee affair, because Glentoran have been good at home, bar the odd blip, and they did get the best of Portadown earlier on in the season. However, this Port side has a bit of bluster about them. They'll come in. I know this rivalry doesn't have the same kind of heat that it used to maybe a decade ago, maybe a decade and a half ago. But I don't think the Glens want a big rowdy bunch of Portadown fans coming to their oval and singing all night, all afternoon. And if there's a bit of a Shay McCartan revenge game, he's coming out in the press talking about how he feels as though he was the scapegoat. If he was to get a goal in this game, I think he'd be doing laps around the oval. It's a game that you think, there's going to be a red card or a bit of full-blooded tackles. There's of the Saturday slate, this is an intriguing game in this middle marsh of the table.
100%, and I think McCartan and McCarry going back to the oval, they both could have a big role to play in the game, because I think Aaron McCarry's been very, very good for Portadown this season. He's given that sort of consistency between the sticks, and he's pulled up some big moments already. And McCarry's proved it in recent years. On his day, he's up there with the best. He's maybe had the odd blip here or there, but he's been a shrewd addition by Niall Curry. So I think they'll be two big players for Portadown on Saturday, and the Portadown masses heading to the Oval would love it to get a result there. And I think it's an R one. It's too close to call. You just don't know. There's nobody going into that game saying, "Oh, this side's definitely going to win." I think it could be another draw, but I think it could be a more exciting draw. I think maybe like a 2-2 there, so it could be.
If there's an early goal, particularly for Glentoran, and this becomes this methodical, plotted out tactical battle, I think I'll benefit Glentoran. I think they have the better players physically, better players from a fitness point of view, and probably better on the ball players. But if Portadown can take that game to 0-0 at the half And if the Portadown fans, between Glentoran not doing well, maybe from their fans and Portadown fans pushing them on, if they can make that feel like an occasion, like a cup game, that's where you can see this game moving into advantage Portadown. It's can they get the goals and will they stay tight at the back? Portadown have good defenders, but their stat line isn't sterling. So I'm going to say 2-1 Glentoran, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's another drama-filled Port's last-minute draw or they sneak a winner or something there. There's a proper back-and-forward Irish League feel about that game, or it's Glentoran winning 4-1 at a canter.
No, I agree with you totally. It's too hard to call.
It's the Baxter matchup. It was the game we all stuck in our calendar as soon as the appointment was made. Carrick Rangers host Crusaders, Taylor's Avenue. I've spoken about Baxter's Carrick Rangers. They'll catch you on the break. They'll set traps for you. They'll make it very difficult to try and find avenues and little alleys to get your players through. You're going to win very few balls in the air against this side, and I got to admit, I think that this would be a huge victory for Declan Condell if he can do it. But there's something about this wily, crafty manager who has this experienced Carrick Rangers side. Crusaders are coming into their den. They'll be trying to plot out all these traps, and Stephen Baxter will think he'll know every which way this team, how they'll play, and it could be a fascinating game, that.
100%. Just even from the fact that, they come up against their manager, who's after been nearly 2 decades at the club, and just the story behind that is just remarkable. And obviously he knows everything inside out of the club, of the Cruise, and what that adds to the game is you just couldn't even write it, so he'll be wanting to put up what he feels that he can take towards the Crusaders and how to beat them, and that physical side, and they have a lot of experienced players obviously in the Carrick team, but I think battle down there and the tight pitch and the form that the Cruise are coming in, probably expect them to maybe come out the right side of it, but I can see it being another very, very close game.
Totally, and it's especially if Carrick take the lead, they will form their mounds, create the battlements, and they'll be prepared for long balls and you trying to break through them. And that's where I don't know if Jordan Stewart is the type of player that can wield his way around this Carrick back line, or he'll be biffed off the ball, ushered into corners and the tight spaces where he can't get out of. So tough game. I think this is going to be 1-1, and I can see it being a situation where set pieces are the dish of the day, and both teams get theirs and they deliver with theirs, and it might not be pretty. It'll definitely not be free flowing unless one side has to try and chase the game. I'm going to say 1-1. Reds Ballymena, I think this is another great chance for Cliftonville if they want to push on, show their muscles. Ballymena are unfortunately losing to everybody right now. They're struggling to score goals. So take your enemy. They've shown you their weakness. The Reds will need to act accordingly, and I think they will. I think this is a 2-0 victory for the Reds.
Yeah, and probably with them kicking off at 3 o'clock ahead of the Linfield game, they'll be thinking, let's put a bit of pressure on the Blues here. We need to go out and get a result. Let's close that gap and just, ramp up, on the league leaders. And as you rightly say, the form of this book of the two sides, it couldn't be more different. 4 wins for Cliftonville, 4 defeats for Ballymena. It only points to one thing, and that's, a Cliftonville won, and I think with Joe Gormley back in the hat-trick at the weekend there, he'll be relishing, getting the boots on again and, and going for more goals.
I'm squinting at Dungannon Swifts against Glenavon, and I'm trying to picture this route to victory for Glenavon. I know it isn't the same type of fortress as it was a mere 3 weeks ago, However, Dungannon score goals at home. They have a confidence and a bullishness that is hard to quell. And it just would take a lot of things to go right for Glenavon to be run out of there with 3 points. Can you see a draw there? I know Dungannon aren't the hot team they were a while ago, but this is a very tricky fixture.
Yeah, there is some doubts about the fixture going ahead. I think Glenavon have a couple of guys called up to the Northern Ireland squad, so there's not maybe would that come at a good time for Glenavon? They take it maybe a bit of a break, but if it does go, so that's probably I don't know if that's a good thing for Glenavon or not. They maybe take a wee bit of a break and try and get their heads going again, or where they should just go and play the game. Obviously, they're big players. They've been playing regularly for the guys for them in the last wee while. But as you say, Dungannon at home would be probably getting to the game as a favourite. If any team that comes out of that with 3 points, I think could be a major boost for them. Kicking on over the next few weeks, because obviously Glenavon's had that wee bit of a slump. Glenavon needs something desperately to kickstart their season. But if it goes ahead, I think it's a home win for me.
Yeah, I think it will be maybe a 2-1 to the Swifts, but it's Glenavon have got a lot to do to try and get out of there with 3 points. But look, we said something very similar a number of weeks ago when Loughgall came out of there, and they did it in impressive form. Perhaps the Swifts are wavering, and they're wavering at home. Loughgall, Coleraine, you're playing against the bottom side in the league. Yes, it's at their home ground. This is one of those where you need to score early if you're a fan of the Bandsiders, because Loughgall will, no matter what, they can be scrappy do. They will just come for you a time and time again, and that's slightly concerning if you're a Coleraine fan. They've got a couple of big boys and a couple of tricky wingers out wide, and something is likely to slip through. So Coleraine, you have the attacking flair. Go make it count.
100%. And like people look at this saying, "Oh, you're going to the bottom team in the league, and you should be getting 3 points." But as you rightly say, it's not as simple as that. Like goal can hurt anybody. I think Coleraine, though, they need to address their away form, and this is probably as good a fixture as they're going to get away from home as they go and pick up 3 points. But that first goal is going to be crucial. If Loughgall get in front, they know how to win down there, and that'll give them the real confidence to kick on and pick up what would be a very valuable 3 points for themselves. So, again, it's another one. I keep saying it. It's tight to call, and I think all these games come down to who scores first on the day.
Yeah, that is actually totally key here. I do think Coleraine will have enough. They may be caught 1-1 at some stage going in to the second half, or maybe later on in the second half, but I think they'll have enough firepower. Sometimes in this league, I think you need that ability to do a change of pace, attack players, win those one-on-one battles, and actually that's one of the real strengths of Coleraine between Shevlin, Murray, Glacken. They will have firepower and the ability to rotate them in. So yeah, 3-1 to Coleraine there. Tasty affair this weekend. I know you'll be all over it, Mr. Crawford. Where can people find your works on the line?
On Twitter X that's not Crawford, and on Facebook and all the other outlets through Belfast Live as well.
Excellent. How are you? How are you feeling going into the next while? It's amazing how close we are to Boxing Day and all the rest.
Yeah, it's mad. Like we just look now, and you're heading towards mid-November, and you're sitting going, "My goodness, there's some big games coming up over the next few weeks, and a few big two derbies, and it just gets excitement going as we build towards Christmas." And you know, the league this year has been so competitive, and it's been great to follow and write about, and long may it continue.
I think we'll get to this when it comes closer to the time, but it could be a very telling January, because we have a lot of these sides who will think that they're in the mix, or will believe that they need reinforcements to get them out of there. Baxter, he'll want to add some players if he can, and history has suggested that Carrick are a team that are willing to invest and they want to get back out and away from that 11th, 12th zone. Lockall might have cash off the back of the Benjamin McGee sale. How will they invest? We'll put it on, think they need to push on with other teams doing it. Coleraine full time. Larne can maybe use this profile to find players in. You know, who else needs to roll the dice? Like, we could be sitting here and there's a couple of deals that are emerging even before the deadline because they need to get these players up and running from the get-go.
100%. I think once you get into December, you'll start to hear a few whispers about players moving on and who's coming in. And I think the majority of teams in the league will look to do business, you know, depending on, you know, for different reasons. Obviously, you have teams at the top pushing for titles and teams near the bottom pushing for survival. And I think every team will look to say, well, what can we do to kick on the second half of the season?
Stephen, excellent insight as always. I really appreciate you giving up your time. Until the next occasion that we may talk, cheerio and all the best.
Thanks, Peter. Pleasure as always.
And there we have it. Delight to have your company once again here on the podcast. Thank you so much for all the support you've shown me as we ascend beyond the 100 episode mark. Of course, if you've found yourself this late on the podcast, I've got to do some promo. Promo begins with following me on Instagram, Facebook, and on Twitter. It's Kick and Match on all of them. How smart am I getting that? You can also follow this podcast on whatever your podcast player is, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You just go onto the main page of Kicking Match, the podcast, and hit follow, hit subscribe. It's free, it's easy, it's a big juicy club full of people like you, and it means you get a little notification to tell you when I drop a brand new episode. And if you're new here, it's usually Tuesday, kind of late afternoon, maybe early evening. All depends. So thank you if you're a follower. Thank you very much for tuning in. Enjoy the games if you get to go to one this weekend. Don't forget your big coat or you will be foundered. I can feel the little fingers of Jack Frost nipping at my toes. Yes, we're coming to that season again. Guys, see you all soon. Bye.